Fireside Tales. Hello, I'm Merlin, Mililli. Welcome to my fireside, where I tell weird tales within tales. And I drink coffee. It's just coffee with a little bit of milk. Just milk. I drink coffee from my skull mug because I'm a deadhead. Just made a funny noise. Maybe I don't need to turn it so that it makes a funny noise and you can see that it's a skull mug. I think you can see that it's a skull mug in profile too. So every week here at Fireside Tales, one thing we've been covering and discussing pretty intensively is reincarnation. As a goal for this show, I would really like to enlighten the whole world as to exactly what reincarnation is, because we really don't seem to understand it. Reincarnation is when a person dies, their soul goes on and is born again into a baby body, and then it grows up in another life. Here at Fireside Tales, every week I've been discussing my book in the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records is an ancient library where every soul has a book. And the book is a record of who, where, when your soul has been. My book in the Akashic Records happens to be really big and really old and really dusty. So there's a lot of information there. So we've been covering all the information in my book. But for that all to be possible, reincarnation has got to be a thing. I gained access to the Akashic Records, or the Akasha. It's a metaphysical library. It's not a place that you can actually go, or a place you have a card for. Actually, I have a key. I was given a key when I was still a teenager in a meditation with the High Priestess card from the Tarot deck. And she gave me the key and said it was for the Akashic Records. And then my spirit guides took me to the library and showed me where to put the key and took me to my book. And you really need your spirit guides to go there. I did. Anyway. So another thing we do here at Fireside Tales every week is discuss, or, well, I tell the story of the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead is a 1960s psychedelic rock band that I happen to really love. And I also have a connection with the Grateful Dead in my book. And they got their name from the stories in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And that is the story I tell every week. The story from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's in Sanskrit, so not very many people really know or understand the story. I was benefited by knowing Fred Jowdy. Shout out to Grateful Fred. We used to call him Grateful Fred. And his parents taught Sanskrit. So he knew how to read Sanskrit. And he had this cool house down on the Far Mill River. And I went to Fred Jowdy's house with my boyfriend, and I think it was him and his girlfriend and me and my boyfriend, and we sat by his electrified tree with a little bench around it by a fire, and he told us the story of the Grateful Dead, as I'm going to tell it to you from a deadhead by a fire. Fred also was the person in this lifetime that turned me on to the Grateful Dead in the first place. I remember I was at St. Lawrence Carnival. I went to St. Lawrence. I'm a Catholic schoolgirl. I was at the carnival, and Fred Jowdy was there, and we were talking to him, a friend of mine, and maybe even a couple of friends of mine, and he was talking about the Grateful Dead, and I had said, I was like 12, I think. I said I didn't really like the Grateful Dead. Yeah, I think I was 11. Yeah, and I said I thought they were too heavy. And he's like, they're not heavy at all. And he was like, you have to listen to them. And his parents had, all of our parents were working at the carnival. And his parents were working at the carnival, I believe. And they had a truck actually parked right close to the carnival. We didn't have to actually leave the carnival grounds. He was older than us, so he was careful, but he was like, you've got to hear them. And so he put on Grateful Dead in his parents' truck. I believe it was his parents' truck. And we sat in the back of the truck and we listened. And I think it was China Cat Sunflower was the first song I heard this lifetime. And it was Grateful Fred. And it was all over from there. It's all over now, Baby Blue. They do that song, but I think that's Dylan. So, as promised, the story of the Grateful Dead. Once, long, long ago, there was a traveler. I don't think Fred told it with this much flair. And it was so long ago that she traveled by foot. And one day she happened upon a little village. As she got closer, she saw there was a crowd. She got closer still and saw that the crowd was squabbling. Then she got close enough to see that they were squabbling over a dead body. Quite literally, the dead man was laying there, and these people were just arguing over who was going to pay his bills and who was going to pay for a burial and who was going to bury him. The traveler thought this was just atrocious and disrespectful to the dead man laying there. Obviously, he hadn't planned on dying at that moment. Do we all ever? So, the traveler paid the dead man's debts and paid for a proper burial and prayed over the dead man's grave. And she traveled on. And then one day, decades later, the traveler from the beginning of the story, who paid the debts of the dead man, she happens upon a life or death situation in which, out of nowhere, a stranger just swoops her up and saves her life. "Thank you," she says. "Who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you save my life?" And the stranger simply says, "I am the Grateful Dead." It's a story about reincarnation. The dead man obviously died. Then he was reborn in a tiny baby body, remembered the kindness of the traveler, remembered his past life and debts, remembered stuff. As they grew up, wanted to repay their debts to the traveler, found the traveler, saved her life. Decades later, grew up. Some people think that it's a corpse at the end that saves the traveler. And that's just silly. Corpses don't save lives. Some people think it's a zombie at the end. But zombies don't save lives. It's a reincarnated person. So my book in the Akashic Records documents all of my incarnations, if you will. And I have these threads that hold each life together that are common among each life. Bear's complaining vocally. It might be too hot in here. It is really too hot for a fire. But fire is one of my threads. And fire safety is very important to me. And it always has been. So it's one of my threads also. But every week here at Fireside Tales, we discuss fire safety a little bit. I have water on top of my stove in the kettle. I have water here. I also have a sprayer around the corner. If you make a fire outside, you want to make sure that there are no overhanging branches, that you dig a fire pit and line it with stones and nothing's growing out of it. that you have a bucket of water, a bucket of dirt, and a shovel before you even start to put wood on that fire. Then you can build a fire outside safely. Okay, and smudging and grounding are also threads of mine. They're things I've been doing for a really long time in preparation for meditating, nature worship, astral projection, anything like that. Readings, tarot, and runes. I read tarot and runes. And before you do a reading, this is sage. It's dried sage. It's in a bundle, and it's called a smudge stick. This is called smudging. When you light the sage, and then you cleanse your aura with its smoke. Cleanse Bear, since he's complaining. And then grounding is when you cleanse your inside. You breathe out. Excuse me. You want to breathe out all of your negative. Excuse me. Breathe in positive, think an uber positive thought. And let it go. So that you're breathing out positive energy and breathing in positive energy. That way you get the most positive results from your meditation, your reading, your ritual, most positive available in the multiverse for you at the time. With smudging and grounding. Stones are also a thread of mine, and angels, and being a psychic medium. So, whether I knew it or not, I've been a psychic medium in every life in my book. And thusly, I communicate with spirits a great deal. And so, they speak of reincarnation as if it only happens when a person is murdered. Therefore, I've been murdered 23 times. So in our first season, I discussed each life in my book a little bit. 23 episodes, 23 lives. My book in the Akashic Records, as I said, it's big and old and dusty. And half of it is in BC and half of it is in AD. And there's a watermark right where that changes from one to the other. And before the watermark, everything is light and dry and sandy. And my lives are much longer. After the watermark, everything is dark and wet and muddy, and my lives are much shorter. I think the watermark marks the Great Flood. I think we had recorded history prior to AD time, but it was taken all out by the Great Flood. So what we have remaining is things that were carved into stone. And one of those things is the King's List. And it's in a couple of different languages and it's carved onto a stone. And the one weird thing about the King's List is before a certain point, the kings all lived like ridiculously long lives. And then after a certain point, they start living much shorter lives, much more normal lives to us today. But the BC lives in my book, in the light, dry, sandy part, are like thousands of years long. So, in our second season, after discussing each life a little bit, we went all the way back to my first life in my book. And then we're proceeding forward. So now it's our third season, and we've been discussing this season the second life in my book. So this is by far the weirdest life in my book. And there is a life connected with the Grateful Dead, as I said. And the second life in my book that we have been discussing this season is weirder. Way weirder. And it's somewhat of an afterlife more than a life. And it takes place mostly in the heavens. The beginning of this life's childhood, I guess you could call it, was spent as an angel. I'm pretty sure I was an archangel, because most of the early angel part, I was standing next to archangels. Michael had been standing right next to me, Michael the archangel. And I fell. We were attacked. The archangels, God, heaven. And I took one violent swing at the attackers in defense of God, and I fell. And I became what I've been calling a cloud bird. But I'm really starting to think that maybe I actually was just a regular angel, fell from archangel to angel. But I was isolated, and it may have been by choice. I observed the stars, the universe, our galaxy, and all of their movements through the universe, the multiverse even. And I believe I shared the information. I know I spent a lot of this afterlife, early angel, looking for my husband from my first life. And I found my children, but they were still living. So I never lost my wings. That's why I say I was a cloud bird. I was definitely made of cloud. I didn't eat or sleep. And I mainly just observed the stars and then reported back to my children what I learned out in the universe. My children from my first life in my book that were still alive. And I was an angel, cloud bird. But I come back and I do find my husband from my first life eventually, but I don't think I find him as a cloud bird or an angel. I find him as a physical person who I kind of get together with here or there again. But I guess there's nothing like that first love. Mine, my marriage it was before there was marriage, really, so it wasn't really a marriage. But we had children together and we were together for like 1,000 years. So we're intertwined, I'm afraid. As I am, I'm sure, with my children still, but I don't seem to look for my children from my first life as much as I did as an angel or cloud bird, because they were still living. And I found them, and I was able to communicate with them. And there's proof of that. Like ancient peoples had carved out bulls when our great year, which is the movement of our galaxy, which takes like 7,000 some odd years, when our galaxy was in Taurus, ancient peoples were carving bulls, lots of them. When our galaxy was in Aries, ancient peoples were carving lots of rams. When our great year was in Pisces, ancient peoples were carving fish, lots of them. And that was during that great year was when the great flood happened, I believe. And when we started being able to record history again. And when, obviously, in the time of Christ. And they say that people, carved the fish. The early Christians carved a fish to tell people that they were Christian without actually having to say it. But then there were all these fountains and things that were all fish related, and those things some people tried to say are fish because of Jesus, but I think they were carved because the great year at the time of Jesus was in Pisces. I also believe that Jesus was a Pisces and that he was a man. But that's a whole nother story that some people don't believe in, but it's what I believe. So, I guess so in this life, as an angel, I remember, or an archangel, I remember being able to talk to other angels and having communication with other angels and God. And then when I became a cloud bird or a regular angel, that communication kind of dropped off. I remember being very isolated, and it could have been from just my desire to observe the multiverse and its movements way up there in the dark and space. And maybe that's just not where the other angels were. But I was alone for like 1,000 years, basically, with the exception of being able to communicate with my living children. But then I come back. I'm in my book again as a living person. But that's why this life is so weird. It's like I was alive, but I wasn't. But the soul does move on. But maybe reincarnation wasn't really a thing yet, or maybe, I don't know. There's still all kinds of questions that I have. So I imagine you have all kinds of questions, and I hope we can clear up some of the questions that we have regarding reincarnation here at Fireside Tales. So another thing we do every week here at Fireside Tales is sing a song. I was, to finish up, and I was singing Deja Vu by David Crosby, because it's really the only song I know of that is even remotely about reincarnation. And I don't know that it's all Deja Vu is regarding reincarnation. I think a lot of it is. I think some of it comes from our dreams, like prophetic dreams. When you see a little excerpt of your life go down, and then you've seen those exact moments with those exact people, those exact words said. You've seen that before. That, I think, is from our dreams. When you go to a city that you've never been to in this life, and like what's around the corner, or not to go down a certain street because it's a steep hill, or what it looked like 100 years ago. That, I think, is deja vu from past lives, where you have been there before. So then I wrote a song called Reincarnation, and I sang it a couple times, and then David Crosby passed away. So as homage to David, I have been singing Deja Vu again ever since he passed away. So I'm going to sing it again. If I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do. Don't you? If I had ever been here before and another time around the wheel, I would probably know just how to deal with all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before, and you know, it makes me wonder what's going on under the ground. Do you know? Don't you wonder? What's going on down under you? La da da, la da da, la da da da, la da da da, da. We have all been here before. 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 One of these days I'll get that harmonica part right. It's hard without a bass to play the bass part. I tried to play it today. I sort of got it, and then I play by ear, so I really need that bass part to catch the right rhythm of the harmonica there. But maybe someday I'll be able to afford a bass player. for now. I can't afford one, so I don't have one. Oh, so I don't make any money off of this show or any of my music, really. I'm always broke. I get paid to make this show and the love show, and time available to make them. Really, that's it. And time is money, so I suppose if I decide to sell my shows to someone, then I could make some money. But for now, I own them, so that's something. So I really didn't mean to dye my hair quite this red. I noticed I do have some highlights coming out. They should come out slowly. I had highlights, but the red kind of covered them up. I think I like red with blonde highlights. I'll probably go with that. I was just rocking the blonde, but then Beyonce stole my hair. She was for that Texas Hold'em business. She had the same hairdo, same exact hairdo, layered to the side, blonde. Same color blonde and everything. So I changed mine because I don't want to be like Beyonce. And they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but I don't really see it that way. I see it more as copying, but, to each his own. So, she even copied my stage hair. I have this wig. I bought it from a Halloween store. It's like all white with one little strip of gray. And I loved the wig, and I used it for a couple of videos for songs. I made an album called Swirls and Curls, where I curled the hair, and it was a 420 album, actually. We're coming upon 420 again. I think it was 2020. I had a quad release. I released 4 albums. One of them, I believe, was Swirls and Curls. And I rocked my top hat and my long locks. And then I see Beyonce on the Rolling Stone Instagram rocking this long white wig, and I'm aggravated. I try to think of things that are original, that no one else is doing, that are mine, for me. And I guess I should just take it as a compliment, but I have a hard time with that. Well, that's it for my coffee. I've told you all my stories and some. Thanks for watching. Have a weird and wonderful weekend. A Mililli Studios production.